Today our guest is Mr. Roswell Pogue, better known as Ronnie Pogue. We're delighted to have him. Ronnie worked in our system for about 32 years.
Yes.
He served as a teacher, an administrator, and a supervisor in our district.
Correct.
And we're looking forward to hearing many of his good stories. So what was it like, Ronnie, growing up in Covington?
Well, it was wonderful. Came to Covington at age 3, grew up in the town and with friends down the street. We played football, we played tops, we played marbles, and at evening we'd play hunt the hay. It was a marvelous, marvelous experience growing up in Covington during the 30s and 40s, especially. Today, it's automobiles, population, but I wouldn't trade anything for my growing up in Covington.
So there weren't many cars when you were growing up?
Oh, listen, cars. I worked at the drugstore on the corner, and if 4 or 5 cars would pass within 15 or 20 minutes, that was something. It'd get your attention. So we had 2 policemen in town, both of them up in their 70s, and no car. They just walked around because there was so little crime, so little of that type of thing going on at that time.
That's wonderful. And where did you go to school?
Started school, I might say earlier than I should have, at 5, because it seems that my sister...
So that was first grade, 5.
First grade, 5, yeah. We didn't have kindergarten then. So at home, when my sister left for school, she was older than I by 3.5 years, I would cry. And Mother got tired of it and said, I'm just going to put you in school. And she did, and nobody questioned it. I was, of course, small, and but nobody questioned it. So I started school at 5 years of age.
And you went to school at?
At Covington Elementary School, which is now the place where the new
School Board
Central Office is. So I went to school there, I taught there, I was principal there.
Wow, that's great.
Great school.
What were your classes like, and what was your school day like?
Back then, gosh, I remember mostly the fact that the recesses were very, very active, but no organization. You know, we just played. And the thing I remember as well was the program of feeding the children. It was a lunchroom soup kitchen at that time. Those were hard times, and for a nickel you could get a bowl of soup. Of course, we brought our sandwiches from home mostly, and there were some very, very hard times. And I remember at times sitting on the bench eating a nice sandwich when some of the less fortunate children would just come and stand and watch, look, and it made me feel so terribly bad. But during those times, you know, you had to create your own folly, your own entertainment. It was just great.
Now, you said there was a soup kitchen. Was that at the school?
At the school, yes, indeed.
Okay.
Every day they made the soup, and those that, I'm sure that those who couldn't afford the nickel probably got it anyway, but that's the way it was.
And Covington Elementary at that time, what were the grades there? You said there was no kindergarten, but so you started in first grade.
It was 1st through 7th.
And then from there, where did you go?
Went to Covington High School. At that time, Lion High, and where it started at the 8th grade through the 11th.
Okay.
That wasn't changed until the year after I left there, where they added that last, at 12th grade.
12th grade.
Yes.
But when you graduated, that was the first year it was called Covington High? And before that it was Lion High?
Lion High. Lion High. That's correct. And I finished it, the name was changed to Covington High.
And I think we have a picture of your graduating class here, don't we? Here. Isn't that your graduating class?
Yes, it is.
Oh, and you're right over here.
Yes.
Okay. Lots of girls in your class.
Yeah, there were only about 14 boys in that class of the high 30s. I don't know why.
Just the
Maybe
way.
because of the war, maybe because some of the boys left early to go in the war. I don't know. But one of them returned from the war at that time, McKinstry.
And came back and graduated?
Yes.
Okay. Now this is a picture of your elementary school?
Yes, that's my elementary graduation from the 7th grade.
From the 7th grade, and you're down here on the front row.
Right.
All right, and then this is your elementary school certificate.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Okay. So you went to high school, and did they have sports and things?
Oh yes, that was a big part of my life. Being small, as I probably still am, relatively speaking, I didn't play football until my last 2 years. I was manager before that. Basketball the same way.
Of course, being a year younger,
yes,
made that even
being
more
younger
difficult.
at that time. But the sports program was wonderful, especially in my last year. We played basketball and did very well and won the state championship.
And I think you have a picture of that, don't you?
I think I do. And I was fortunate enough to be elected as All-State that year.
Who are some of the other people? Are there any other people in this that our listeners might be interested in?
Larry Burns, Buck Molazone, Crutchfield. There was a Crutchfield. Huey Thompson. Oh, some of the names escape me, but they shouldn't, but they do. Simpkins, and Coach Gallagher. How great he was! Just a wonderful, wonderful man and coach.
And then this is your football team?
Yes, that was my before I was on the team. I'm there as a manager on the front row on the right.
Okay, over here. Okay.
That would have been 1944.
And after you graduated from high school, what did you do then?
Well, we made a mistake, the family and myself. I went to LSU, Baton Rouge. And at that time, 1946, all the veterans were coming back. And there I was, 16 years old, and in that mass of veterans, and I was totally out of place. I didn't do well in my subjects at all. It was so crowded, all the stadium were given to the veterans, and I was assigned to a spot 12 miles away where I had to bus in. I couldn't start my classes until 10 o'clock, and so everything about that was not pleasant for me. So at the end of the semester, we left, and I went to Southeastern, where everything was much, much better.
How did you decide to go into education?
Well, I really can't say what it was, except that Southeastern was a teacher's college, you know, as far as I knew, and a lot of people in it, my friends, Troy Jackson, Henry Ferrer, all of them. I guess that was what it was. That as a group, we decided that we would go into teaching. So that's the best I can give you on why, but
that sounds like
something I never regretted.
Well, we haven't regretted it either, because I know you were a mentor to me and played an important role in my life as an educator here in St. Tammany. When you graduated from college, you came back to St. Tammany and started teaching here?
Yes, that was interesting. I was drafted before the graduation ceremony at Southeastern. Sip Shane and I were taken in the service at the same time, the very same time, and for 2 years. So we didn't get the ability to graduate with all the students. So we got our diploma in the mail, so to speak. Coming back, I was released on the middle of September. Of course, school had started here, and I was fortunate enough to have Mr. Mayfield call me there at the base in San Antonio and said, Ronnie, do you want to teach? I know you have your teaching certificate. I said, well, school started, Mr. Mayfield. He said, well, if you want to come back and start teaching, he says, I'll put a substitute in there and you can start as soon as you get back. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And I went to Folsom Elementary School at that time and started my teaching career.
And I think we have a picture of that faculty here. Is this when you were teaching?
No, I was principal at that time.
That's when you were principal. Oh, okay.
I taught for 5 years.
And taught, what did you teach there?
I taught 8th grade and 7th grade.
Okay, so Folsom was a 1 through
8. Yes.
At that time.
And I taught physical education. Mr. Dubison loved teaching, and so he taught the math and the English, and I would take the classes and go and teach phys ed in the gym. And I would teach the other subjects, the spelling, the language, science. So I was a
so
great
you team
number
taught
of
with
Pardon?
you team taught with Alfred Dubison.
That's right. We had a team.
Okay. And you were there for 5 years?
Taught there for 5 years. Then Mr. Dubison moved to Covington Elementary School as principal. And Ralph Minitry came as principal at Folsom. And he stayed 1 year and then moved up into the supervisory position, and I became the principal for that year. And I stayed there as principal for 5 years, and then I moved into Covington High. Covington Junior High as principal for 1 year.
The Covington Junior High is what was Covington Elementary when you went to school, is that?
That's correct.
Correct, so it was in that same building. But it was, when you were principal, it was Covington Junior High, so what grade levels were there then?
6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
So that was, and of course, after that 1 year, I was fortunate enough to elevate into the supervisory position.
All right. And with the pictures we have here, this is a picture of the faculty at Folsom Elementary.
That's correct.
When you were principal there.
That.
And then this is your faculty at
Covington Junior High.
Okay, and you have the names on the back of this one. And I see Terry Bankston on here, one of our former superintendents, and one of the Ferrers.
Billy Ferrer,
Billy
yes.
Ferrer.
He became principal at Mandeville Elementary for years.
Okay. Who were some of the influential people in your life? You've mentioned Mr. Mayfield.
Right. Alfred Dubison, you know, he was my first mentor in the education system. He was as straight and as stern a man as you ever want to meet, and he was just a wonderful person to be with and to know and to learn under. Other than that, you know, I pretty much have to owe it to Alfred being the one that gave me a good start in education.
Now, you got your master's degree while you were teaching out at Folsom?
No, it was later. It was
Okay.
later than that. It was during my years at junior high school that I finished, got master's, and then went on to get the extra 30. So over the years, you finally got to the point where you could do as well as you could financially in the system.
And as a supervisor, you were supervisor of?
Well, supposedly elementary, but there was not much supervision then. My first job, and the biggest job they gave me, thanks to Dick Clanton moving out of it, was transportation. There were over 200 buses at that time, and I'd been in Covington all my life, except my years in military, and I had no idea about Pearl River, Slidell, all the other places. And to put me in charge of 200 buses and have to deal with the problems that come up, especially early in the year, I didn't know where the roads were. You know, it was a terrible thing to put somebody in. But the way I handled it, I would seek out somebody who had been in that particular area a good number of years. They knew everything, they knew every road, and I would pinpoint those people to solve my problem.
Delegate.
I delegated that, and it's the only way I was able to get through that position. And it was very, very interesting.
And you learned a lot about our parish, I bet.
Oh yes, I finally knew the roads. I finally knew where to put the little shacks to put the children in when they waited for the bus. Yeah, it was interesting, but I was glad to get out of it when I did. So that was just an interesting experience. Let's see, what else did I do?
I know you supervised kindergarten.
Yes, I did.
That's when we started working together.
Right, right. That was always a pleasure, being around the children, around the teachers. A very rewarding time, very rewarding.
One of the things, Ronnie, I remember when you were supervisor, the way that schools were observed or evaluated is very different than what we're doing now. You want to tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, we came up, I don't know who was particularly that originated it, but we came with what we call the team approach, where all of us as supervisors and assistant superintendents would go to a school, and we had drawn up a list of the priorities that we were looking for. And we would spend the day at that school, and there would be people, you know, there was a staff of about 7 or 8 of us. So when we got back, we wrote up our observations and got together and decided what strengths there were and perhaps, if anything, what weaknesses. And then we would relay that to the school and to the faculty for their edification. And we did that. We didn't do, I don't recall doing the high schools. We pretty much dealt with elementary and junior high schools in that respect.
I remember a funny story, and I don't know if you remember this or not, when, because you did kindergarten, you were often the one sent into the kindergarten classrooms, and one year you were out at 5th Ward in Joy Lynn Hune's classroom. Do you remember that? Joy Lynn used to love to tell that story about you.
No, I don't quite
That you went in, and you were always so good when you'd go into the rooms because you'd lean over and talk to the students, and Joy Lynn said you were in the room and she was busy doing stuff, and all of a sudden she looked over at you and you had leaned over and some child had you by your necktie talking to you with holding on to your necktie.
I remember now. I surely do. That was wonderful.
Yeah, the kids loved it though. They loved having you come in and have you talk to them. And
always the best part of my life was in those classrooms and dealing with those children. It was wonderful.
What were some of the other things? I know you had professional development that you helped with back then, and then we did, if I remember right, we had certain days that we shut the schools down and had a parish-wide professional.
Yeah. I don't have any real solid memories of what I know that we came together as a whole parish, and we broke up into various avenues, and we went around, of course, and kind of dealt and talked and observed. But my memories of any particulars on that are very vague, very vague. It was something that we did not often, once a year, as I recall, for several years.
I just remember you being a part of that when we were doing those kinds of things. One of the things that I think, you know, I said in the beginning that you were a mentor, and one of the things that I remember you telling me that made such an impression on me was I was upset about something, and you were like, you can't get upset about these things. Now, the sun's going to go down today, just like it does every day, and it's going to come up again tomorrow. just like it always does. And that had made such an impression on me and kind of calmed me down and made me realize that the world's going to go on, that this isn't the end of the world. And it was just a great experience, and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for reminding me of it.
After you retired, you went into a whole different field of what did you do?
Yes, I did. The very first time after I got out, I went. The biggest mistake I ever made was going into the insurance business, and I was just a fish out of water. It was awful. And not too long after I decided that wasn't for me, a friend of mine, Harry Grant, and I decided to open a Precision Tune, which was an auto repair place in Slidell. And we had a great location, and we stayed in that. And my son David, who was trained as a mechanic, was there with us starting out, and that's one of the reasons I thought we'd do it.
Now that was at the corner of Gauze and Front Street, wasn't
right.
it?
One of the best locations. It was not as it is now, but it was a building that we didn't have to do very much to organize the program. And we stayed into that for about 3 years. And then we had to move because our lease ran out, and of course, you know the location, the owner had a much bigger idea of what needed to be there. So we moved down the highway a ways, and it just ruined our business, so we went out of it. That was my first experience after teaching. The next one was getting into the food business. Across from the courthouse, the original, the one that is there on New Hampshire, was a small restaurant that's been there for years. So we got into that, and I stayed into that for about 4 years.
That was the Courthouse Cafe?
Courthouse Cafe, directly across the street from the side of the courthouse. And it was a good business. Enjoyed it. The people, you had a lot of different people because of the court activities. So it was a good cross section, and then of course you had the people who came every day, as you well understand. So then I decided we needed to do something on a bigger scale. And my son and his wife took over that, and I left to open another shop. It was on Tyler Street.
Was that Tyler Street Grill?
Tyler Street Grill, that's correct. And we stayed in that for 5 years. And again, my son, who was a good cook and still is, helped run that business. Let's see, there was another one. We went then, after getting out of that one, we went to where the new courthouse was built and opened the restaurant across the street from there and stayed there for 4 years. And then we got out of it altogether, thank goodness, because it was something that was not the best at that time.
That's a hard job.
Yeah, because the thing that got us there was security, because you know, you have to go in the courthouse, you have to go through all the machines, and the people didn't have time on their breaks to get over to the restaurant. So it kind of just disappointed us that we didn't have the people that we expected to have at that time.
But all of those places are still restaurants.
Oh yes, they are.
That you started, right?
They're still doing it.
So
it was an interesting experience.
And then you finally retired.
Finally retired, that's right.
But during all this time, even when you were teaching, you were very active in Playmakers.
Oh, boy, yes. I'll never forget that phone call I got, and that was in the early days. This lady, and I forget her name, said, Mr. Pogue, how would you like to try out for a play? I said, well, I don't know. Well, she talked me into it, went out and tried out, and got the role. Wasn't a big one. I thankful for that. But the worst part of it was, as I entered the stage, and here I am a teacher now, my first line, I had to curse. And that was terrible. But I had to do it because I took the part. And they didn't, there was a local writer, and I tried to tell him, no, not, he said, you've got to do it. That's the way it's written, you know. So thankfully, not many people from Folsom were there to hear that. So, but after that, of course, I love the playing. I love playmakers. I've acted, I've directed. I've never written one. Don't care to do that.
Well, you still have time to do that.
I know I have, but I don't really have that ability to write. But I've been in many, many plays. Enjoyed every one of them. I think I will do, the next one I will do will be Cats. Playmakers is going to do that. And the director said, I've got a spot for you in that.
Well, wonderful.
I said, you need an old cat, huh? So,
well, I think we have some pictures here of you in, this is when you were in,
let's see, what is that?
Music Man?
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music? And you made the front cover of the magazine, of the Covington magazine.
Right, right, that was nice. That was the best role I ever played, most enjoyable.
Okay, good. And here we have some awards night after.
Right, after the season they gave out awards. And there's
see.
my good friend Troy Jackson that we lost a few months ago.
And he was always very active in
absolutely.
playmakers
Absolutely.
and loved playmakers. A couple of the other pictures we have here. This is your reunion of?
Yeah, 40th reunion from Covington High School.
Okay.
And the students that were there and some of the teachers.
Alfred Dubuisson, I see there on
yeah.
the end, and you here in the middle. All right. And then this is some of the
That's a staff, a sort of a...
supervisors.
That's correct. That was the supervisory staff.
And some of the people we see in here are yourself. I see Ralph Menatry and
Right. Glenn Fairburn right behind him.
Glenn
I just
Fairburn.
remembered that.
And Otis
Otis
Bryan,
Bryant,
Dick Clanton,
Ronnie Wascom, Sip Shane,
Richard Tanner, huh?
Richard Tanner, correct. Dealer Smith,
and Phyllis Eden,
Phyllis Eden,
Isabel Yarborough.
Isabel, yes.
I don't know who that is.
It's
Miss McNeil.
Abney, Mrs. Abney from Slidell.
Okay.
And
Erminie
of course,
McNeely.
Erminie McNeely. And
Mary Ellen
Mary
Armitage.
Ellen Armitage.
Wonderful. Great picture. Great picture. Is there anything that's outstanding that sticks out in your mind that, as far as your career, in any of your careers, but especially in education, that you'd like to share with?
It was the situation in the office where all of the workers were. I loved them all. It was just a pleasure to go to work and stay in that office, and then of course leave and do what you have to do and then come back. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. You know, it's
Like family.
like family, exactly that.
And I think our district is still like that, Ronnie.
Well,
That's
I
one
hope
of
it
the
is.
things Gail talks
I hope
about.
it is. It's certainly lot larger, but I'm sure that anytime I've gone up in there, I get, when I see my old buddies, I get that feeling now.
So you were part of what started all of
That's
that.
right.
And
That's right.
we really appreciate your coming here today and letting us interview you.
Well,
One last question. What kind of advice would you give to young teachers or young administrators today?
well, of course, being prepared is the first thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you take the subjects and learn the information in the books. It's if you don't love young people, you shouldn't ever get into teaching, because it will not be a rewarding thing for you. You'll find other reasons to be unhappy. So that would be the main thing. Love young people, students, and of course being involved with other people who have that same feeling. So that would be the thing that I would suggest.
Great. Thank you.